Does money play a role in our social status and social life? Can money affect how we are being perceived in the social arena, how we relate to one another, even our friends and family? In this video, I'm going to share a short clip of an interview that my very good friend, Miss Mabel, conducted with me again, Miss Mabel from Talk to Me Africa. It was a few months, probably last year. She and I had sat down and she brought me on her channel to talk about all things financial, to talk about financial planning. But the conversation went so well that her audience requested that I come back. And one of the big topics that a lot of them wanted to hear about was to see how there's an intertwine or there's some interdependencies, or how money affects social life, social status, how we behave in the social arena. So in this video, you're going to see a short clip of that interview. It was a really lengthy one, but I may share it. I've piecemealed it, and I'm going to share portions of it as time goes on. So today, stay tuned and watch this first episode, or this first portion of that interview that we did with Miss Mabel. Man, you would enjoy this one. I guarantee you. Stay tuned.
All right. Well, Kingsley and I have known each other for a few years in Minnesota, where I am broadcasting today from. And so thank you for keeping in touch, and today we're resourceful to each other and also to the public at large. And so we want to talk about money and your social life. People talk about money like, money, I can buy a house, I can buy stuff, but how does it even impact the way you dress, the way you present yourself to people? That is what we want to talk about today, money and your social life. Now, question number one, what role does money play in determining social status and social interaction? To put it in a different way, does it matter how much I have for me to interact with some people socially?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing is, money is so, as much as sometimes we talk about money negatively, the truth of the matter is money is deeply intertwined with how people view themselves and others, really. Bottom line, money is deeply intertwined when it comes to that. I'm going to define two phrases from an economic standpoint. The first one is that you have, most of us, in one way or the other, there's always this economic effort that people are engaged in to exceed someone else's socioeconomic status.
Okay.
What I just described is what the economists will call pecuniary emulation.
So there's always the rush for me to say, Kingsley is a millionaire, I am a millionaire, I want to be a billionaire to beat him.
That part
There's
of
always
it.
that race.
Yeah. So you want to always, you're doing that. As much as you feel like you're striving for yourself. But the thing is this, like they always say, someone is always going to be ahead of you, and someone will always be behind you. Right? But most of the time, we tend to be competing against other people versus competing against ourselves. And for me, when I began coming to this realization, my whole primary focus is, I want to get better today than I was yesterday. So I want to always compete against me, because my race is unique to me. Right? There's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that says something so profound. And here is King Solomon, the guy whom we all know that he is considered the wisest man. He said, I found something interesting under the sun. And he said, the race is really not for the swift and the battle for the strong. And then he said, time and chance happens to them all. I want us to think about what he said. That means that you and I, God is just enough to make sure that every human being would have their time or opportunity to blossom, to succeed, to prosper. Each of us will have that opportunity. I want you to pay attention, opportunity, because I'm going to define the word poor by using it as an acronym.
Okay.
But time and chance happens to us all. It happens to us all.
I'm
Okay.
going to come back to that because somebody might disagree with you, my brother. Somebody might be like, no, it doesn't happen to us all. It does not. I'm going to come back to you on that, but keep going.
Yeah, right. So that's
Mhm.
one. But we're always striving to, making efforts to want to exceed, pecuniary relation. But the other one is this: is that you also have people who are acquiring wealth, but now they are also in the process of exhibiting what they have acquired to gain social status. That aspect is what the economists will say pecuniary struggle. So now you have amassed some wealth. Now you've gained some success.
Mhm.
Now you want to show it off so you can gain social status.
Mhm.
So the whole concept and the whole reason why money is so profound is because it plays into every facet and fabric of our lives. The last time I talked about the 5 F's, I even add 1 6, but I said, for me, doing this is because I found why money is so profound.
Mhm.
And what are these 6 things which I call the 6? I'll repeat them again. My faith, my family,
Yeah.
finances, fitness or my health, right?
Mhm.
Fun, and friends.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: money is like your thumb,
Mhm.
and your thumb is the only finger that can touch the other fingers.
Mhm.
Without your thumb, all these other fingers will be difficult to touch each other,
Mhm.
right? Money touches every aspect of our lives. And because of that, that's why we are so driven to get it. Now, your motivation for it is a whole different aspect,
Okay.
right? Because it really, money would simply assume the characteristics of its holder. So
Mhm.
your motivation defines or will determine what you will get to do with what you have,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Money really affects so many layers. If we start with just one, let's just say social status. I just kind of touched on that already. People are striving to have it, and the people who have it also creates a barrier.
Yeah.
You now start to have people who want to tag on with them, or they also now would only look for friendships or relationships or networks with people who are about the same status.
Yeah.
You start seeing that segregation because of
Mhm.
it, right?
Mhm.
Well, when you look at social interaction, the first part you look at is power dynamics.
Mhm.
The truth is, money can influence. Okay, money can influence.
It
So
does.
now you have money, you can influence decision making in a lot of spaces,
Mhm.
right?
There are
And
some clubs where you get admitted based on how much money you make, what your value is. Keep on. Yeah, this is interesting.
and even in friendships, sometimes when some friends know that, oh, you're the guy who, or you're that girl who has, right, they want to maybe rely on you more, right? Now, I'm going to bring another scripture which is in the Bible. Again, it's Ecclesiastes. It's very interesting. I think it's Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 16. But here's an interesting story. That story recounts that there was an era where a great king attacked a small village. But there was an old wise man in that village. They came up with a very wise scheme on what they could do.
Mhm.
And that village was able to win that war.
Mhm.
But the scripture recounts that people rejoiced that they won the war, but they never really gave gratitude to that poor wise man. In fact, the
Mhm.
scripture said he was poor.
Mm.
And so King Solomon was saying, here is something I've now discovered, that the wisdom, even though wisdom is better than strength,
Mhm.
status will sometimes be regarded or recognized or receive more than wisdom, especially when it comes from a place where someone is poor. So they're saying because of that poverty that the man had, and because of his social status, because he was poor, even though he was wise, his wisdom was disregarded, even though it could save them. We find that at play in society today in so many levels.
Wow.
Even in this country, we have wise counsel that is coming from so many places, but they are so disregarded because people who have certain social status, when they speak, people tend to listen to them more.
Yeah.
Not because what they are saying makes sense
Makes
or
sense.
to go, but because of their social status.
Yeah.
That is the power of money. Okay. So imagine now if you have it and you are wise.
Wow. Okay. Imagine if you have your wise. Before you proceed, there's a question for you on Facebook. How can you tell if the people who love you or socialize with you is because of what you got, or is it genuine love? Sometimes it's lonely at the top, the person says.
Yes, and that is another problem with money, because once you have it, it's difficult for you to tell. But one of the ways I would suggest is that you have to look out for character traits, right? Because the truth is this: money is a very good amplifier.
By the way, thank you, Bertrand Fonsa, for that question. Yeah, I had to acknowledge him.
It's a very good amplifier, right? Just like Lincoln once said, that if you want to test the true character of someone, give people power and see what they will do with it. Sometimes if you're in that circle of friends where you are the guy, you have that money, test them out. Allow them to do something. Give them money sometimes to allow them, engage with them in something to see how they're going to handle themselves. It's the same thing. The principle that God has laid out is so amazing. It works regardless of who uses it. If you are faithful with the little, then
We'll give you more.
You can become ruler over much.
Yeah.
It's a simple test that we all get tested on. That's a simple way to test to see if that person is truly with you or they are there for the money.
For the money. So basically, you're telling Bertrand that it's hard to tell if somebody is with you because of your money or not. And you're also adding that because I have money, I can insult you and pay you cash. And you won't do much to me.
Exactly. So that's the other side that people can take it, right?
Yeah.
Pay your way out of anything, because money can answer a lot of problems.
That money can stop rubbish.
Money can solve, right? Yeah, Nigerians have a saying. They say, with money you can cook stones. Right? There are many problems that money can solve, right? But if you're going to validate for yourself if someone is with you because of them really valuing you, then you have to ask yourself what matters. Ask yourself those questions. What is it that you are after? What value do you have, and what value do you want in this, maybe that relationship or whatever? If you ask yourself those questions and then you really observe, because the thing is this: we are human beings, we are emotional. That's why we are called biological. We are not just logical, we are biological, which means we're two. We are logical and we are emotional. That's why we're biological. So there are some things that people would do because of logic, and there are some things people would do because of emotions. Check both. Use both to confirm for yourself if this interaction we're having with this person is truly rooted in what you value.
Well, if you're just joining us, this is Talk to Me Africa. We are live on Facebook, and I'm talking with Kingsley Ekinde, and we're talking about money and your social life. How does money affect your social life? This is a very important and interesting conversation, and he's just adding on to what I asked him. I asked him about the role that money plays in determining social status and social interactions. And yes, of course, it's hard to tell sometimes if some people are with you because of your money or not. Are they genuine or not? Even sometimes in our cultural meetings, right? When you have money, you can talk. Like you said, talk foolish. People are going to listen to you. But if you have no money, sit down. Who are you? Even in your own family settings, they know that Uncle John is the one who has money. He can say whatever. Oh, the meeting cannot start, or they cannot adopt decision because Uncle John hasn't spoken or he's not here yet. Meanwhile, Uncle Peter, who is so wise but doesn't have money, nobody listens to him. So money has a lot to play when it comes to your social status and social interaction. Unless you have more to add to that, can I move on to the next question?
You know, that question is so loaded.
It is.
And yeah, it's so loaded that, you know, if we really begin to put our thinking to it, because a lot of times some of these things have been implanted at the subconscious level.
Yeah.
And the thing about the mind is that there is a subconscious part of our minds and there's a conscious part of our minds. And what has been implanted subconsciously is what drives your life. Now, some of it, unfortunately, a lot of it is working against us now because the programming we received were the wrong programming, or in some areas we just come from a place of poverty beliefs. Let me explain what I mean. When I woke up this morning, no one had to tell me that I needed to groom myself. And whatever I considered grooming, I did. So it could be brushing my teeth, taking a shower, combing my hair, whatever, rubbing lotion, you name it. But all of that, I learned traits. From the time I was born, all of what I just described, I observed somebody do it on me, to me, with me, or for me. So over time, I learned that this is what you do.
Yeah.
If I wake up and I go for a period of time without brushing, subconsciously, it feels awkward. I feel like I'm out of place. Okay? And what that does is it allows me to become efficient in that area. Can you imagine if every morning when you woke up, you had to relearn the process of brushing your teeth? Can you imagine the effort it would take? Every morning you wake up, you have to relearn the process. You know, so many things we do, we take it for granted, but that's where the subconscious mind comes in, because it allows the human experience for us to become efficient at doing certain things that we don't need our brains to keep rethinking how to do.
Yeah.
Programs it so we are on autopilot.
Yep, we
Okay?
are.
But now here's the other thing. Because of that as well, some really inefficient, right, and ineffective things and ways of living have also been programmed now. And so we are also on autopilot in that regards. Especially when it comes to money. That's why finance is so profound.
So important.
Whole mindset needs to shift.
Yeah.
But how you have been trained by the observations you've had over time about what money is, about how money is used, and all of that, now has programmed you to also function that.
So if you grew up in a household where your father always said money is bad, You know, I don't want it. It's bad because it doesn't really help me. You're programmed that way. And then the person who grew up in a house where your father said, okay, money is good. I need money all the time for this. You're programmed that way. And as you grow older, your programming is what you basically live by.
Yes. Yes. So even now, so here's what happens. So now, because of that programming, that's at the subconscious level. Conscious level now, you are now somewhat awakened to what is called challenges. So now you're realizing through life experiences that, hey, I need money. Hey, with this, I can solve many problems. Hey, with that, I can do this. Hey, you know, so your awareness for the need of money is becoming widened, which is forcing you or triggering a sensation that, hey, maybe what I really used to believe about money is really not true. But that subconscious programming still exists.
There, it's embedded.
Consciously, you are there. Consciously, you see the need for it. So every moment for every one of us, every human being, we all have those what I call bursts of energy where that our awareness becomes heightened.
Thumbs up.
It is not enough to reprogram the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is a highly deductive system. It simply believes what it has been put in. The conscious mind is very, very inductive or inference. It's analytical and reasoning. So when it makes sense at that conscious level, that's what you really want to do. But because the part that drives your life is a subconscious mind, it's now going to fight against this new idea that you're trying to introduce. So it brings you to the place where you may have heard the word psycho-cybernetics. It's a mechanism that regulates your mindset because of a way of functioning. The simplest example I can describe with what I just used, psycho-cybernetics, is a thermostat in the house. Your thermostat, for some of you right now, if you're up north, maybe you're about to start experiencing
Getting cold.
You've cranked it up to maybe 78 degrees, or maybe you've turned it from AC to heat.
Yeah.
Okay. But us down south, it's still hot, so we're
It's still hot. You're still on AC mode.
Yeah. But at the same time, I've set the thermostat in my house to a certain degree. Okay. Now, here's what happens. What is that thermostat doing? That thermostat is simply there monitoring the environmental temperature of the house. Once the house goes above that temperature, that thermostat kicks in and says, hey, guys, the house is hotter, but Kingsley wants it to be at 75 degrees. Let's generate some cold air to bring the house back down to 75 degrees. Okay? So the system kicks in, it starts pumping cold air. And it will pump the cold air until it senses the temperature. So while it's doing that, it's also monitoring the temperature status. Once the temperature reaches 75, it says, hey, we can now cool down. We can now stop our activities because we are back to where we need to be. That is exactly how your mind is working when it has been programmed. So anything that tries to go above what it has been programmed, your mind is going to fight to bring it back down to what you have been programmed to believe.
And is this reprogramming possible? Because if you grew up in a household where your father thought that money was a bad thing, and now you're an adult and you still have that thought, that belief that it's a bad thing, can you reprogram your mind to think that it is?
Certainly, you can. You definitely can. Even the scripture tells us that. Romans 12, right?
Love how you're associating the scriptures with money. But keep going, yeah.
Well, the apostle tells you that I beseech you, brethren, that you renew your mind, right? Right? You renew your mind. How? The question is, how do you renew your mind? That's where repetition comes in. Because the only way, think about how it was programmed before, it was repetition.
Yeah.
About it, for anyone who has had a new job and you didn't know where it was, probably your first week, you had to use your GPS to get to work. After that first week, you probably, by maybe 90% or more, you could drive to work without
So
requiring
true. Yeah.
it to happen. You just
You
reprogrammed
programmed your mind.
all of a sudden, and it was necessary to make your commute to work efficient. You don't
Yes.
think about where to make a left, when to make a
Always
right.
make it right.
So repetition is that activity that now we have to become used to now introduce and embed that new way of living that we want. Once that is achieved, it becomes autopilot just as the other ones.
Autopilot. Yeah. So it's doable because, I talk about thinking about, like, let's say you have friends who grew up knowing that money was good, and then you become friends with them today, right? And you think that you grew up knowing that money wasn't good. Now you want to be like them. Now your mind has been programmed. So it's still possible to reprogram it and become like, your friends and make some money and match their social status. So you feel more comfortable among them because, believe it or not, I went to secondary school where you had some rich kids and people who associate with them. You have the rich kids, you say, okay, it's lunchtime, or we do not lunch, we call it long break time. Take this money, go buy me food. You who are a poor kid, that's your friend who's rich. They will send you to go buy food for them and you would comply, you oblige because you don't have the money. And you know that from that money you're going to buy food for them, your own food comes from that as well, right? But if you were at the same social level with that kid who had money, they would dare not send you. Dare not send you. So you can therefore reprogram your mind and get to that level so that your social status becomes a mesh with what their own is. And so, money does really affect your social status and social interactions, because how dare that rich kid send another rich kid to go to that dining shed, as we should call it, back home and go buy food for you. So it does really affect that. I'm going to move on to the next question, but before I do that, let me see what Bertrand says on Facebook. He says that yesterday I wrote a post about this subject of money in relation to poverty. The expression was, you can't force on getting rich or building wealth at the same time fighting for the true or love in a relationship. I have a take on this as someone who's been on both sides of the aisle. What would be your advice to Gen Zs about the pertinent choice of life? I rest my case. I'll check on that later. Gen Zs and money. I think money does really affect your social life. And today, Gen Z, with all the social media hype, you're wearing Gucci. I want to wear Gucci too, so I want to be like you. And so we live fake life online. I could go borrow this shirt and wear it to make a post, but it is not mine. So money does really affect our social interactions in society. And I mean, he's right. Gen Zs, because they live in the light of social media. Everybody sees everybody's happenings in life. They want to be like, anyway. Thank you so much for saying that, Bertrand. Now, let me ask you this, Kingsley. How does access to financial resources affect our health and our well-being? Your money and your health, your money and your well-being.
So think about the 6 F's that I mentioned, right?
Yes, your faith, your family, your finances, your fitness, the fun you have in life, and your friends.
Very good. So now, think about this, and your health is one of them. The lack thereof.
The lack of money.
Yes. Has led to even death. Why? Because if you can't afford that treatment, you can't afford that basic health care, what happens? Right? Not only that, when you think about some of the things we ought to do to stay healthy, because here's something that I came to the realization of this a long time ago. I'm someone who is, I don't want to say spiritual, but I love to examine things, right? I don't just like to accept things, whether it's spiritual or whatever, because somebody said it. I like to examine things.
Keep going. I'm going to plug my computer. I'm listening to you.
Yeah, sure. So something about, sometimes we talk about healing and health, right? And then there is life, abundant life, you name it. I believe in healing. I mean, God heals, and we have tons of examples where we can look at in our day-to-day living that people have been healed from so many conditions, some even just going through some natural measures. So healing is something that God has blessed us with. When it comes to health, I want us to recognize that there's a distinction there, because healing is not health. Think about it for a minute. Something we were doing from a health standpoint is probably what led us that have to becoming sick. So when you now become healed because maybe you took some medications or you did some things. Now, granted, we live in a fallen world, so there's some things we may never be able to just avoid. Okay?
Right.
Because if science tells us that there are billions of microbes that live on our skin on a daily basis, every day we take a shower, some die, and then some are there. And some of those microbes, some of them are good, some of them are bad, but they are there. Now, if you think about it, so what I'm saying is healing is something that God can do, but you and I, our health, really comes down to our responsibility. Okay? So when you think about your health, it starts with what we are ingesting.
Yeah.
That's one of it, right? Probably maybe that's maybe 80–90% of it. Because as much as exercise is great, the science is proving to us that, exercise really doesn't account for much. Because I have seen, and I have two friends of mine who are now of late, but they were very fit. In fact, one of them died at the gym. He suffered a heart attack. So fitness is not necessarily health. You can be ripped, but you're not healthy. So when we think about being healthy, ask what you need to do to ensure that I can live a healthy life. And if you're living on this side of the world, in the United States, where everything we need, we probably have to buy, how many people are truly looking, maybe growing their own crops? Not that many. And then when you go to the grocery store, how many of us are buying the organic stuff? Now, we know the organic stuff now is even so messed up. The USDA, definition for organic is so messed up that even the organic stuff now is crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So, and all of that, it's another challenge. So you're probably not eating right. You're probably not eating a very balanced diet, and then right? And then now maybe when you fall sick, maybe you can't afford treatments, or even when you do, you're being given the most basic treatments because again, you're relying on that company medical benefit.
Or the state gives you what coverage it can give you.
Yeah.
You can't pay for it yourself.
Thank God that the companies are offering it, but it has its limitations, right? Because there are things you can do. There is no limit to examining. If you want to do a thorough analysis of your health, you can, but it's going to cost money. And your medical insurance will only probably go so far to cover that. So now if you think of the out-of-pocket stuff, all of a sudden it becomes a subconscious decision of, do I spend this money? Or when I have all these other bills? So all of a sudden, money is driving even the decisions you make when it comes. That is how deep it is. And then for some of us coming from an environment where, we have even prioritized certain things over our health, that only makes the situation more complex.
Worse. We prioritize our Guinness over our health.
Right? Because now some of us, we think we are, we have gotten to the point where, of course, guess what? Our bodies is always going to communicate to us. Our body is always going to do that. But sometimes we have ignored some of that communication. If our bodies could speak, it would tell us when things are really wrong. But why do I say so? Because a friend of mine passed away due to cancer. He was having back pains, but he always just felt that, oh, maybe it was because of his bed. His bed was not good enough. And he was planning to buy a better bed because he thought the bed was, right? But you go to work and colleagues would talk to him and say, please, why don't you just go check up? Say, oh, no, I'm good. I'll pop a pill. And he kept popping ibuprofen and all of that. When it got so bad and he went to the hospital, finally, they saw something. They weren't sure if it was cancer, but they saw something. And the decision was made that, okay, they'll go in, they saw something like a growth around his kidney. And after evaluation, they said the doctor made a decision, they agreed to say, okay, they'll go in and maybe scrub that part out and they'll take it and go do some biopsy on it to see if it's cancerous. Well, long story short, by the time the results came back, he went back for a follow-up visit and only to discover that something had begun spreading. And that was cancer. Within 6 weeks from that time, this guy passed away. This was a guy who was healthy, but within 6 weeks, he lost so much weight. But I want you to imagine this. This is something that he had been experiencing for months prior. And he was paying health insurance. But he never bothered to go check. So imagine this, we live in a society where some of us are paying for that health insurance, and even to go for that annual checkup, we don't do it. Why? Because one, we're from a place where we pride ourselves to feel healthy. We're always good. Nothing is wrong with us, especially for African men who think invincible and they will never die. So we don't even go for checkups. If something hurts us, we just throw it outside and we just continue life. Right? So money has a huge part to play when it comes to how we live health on a health scale. Right? If you have the money and the resources to pay a trainer,
you would
buy food, to eat a certain way. You think about what you could do with money, because let's take it, you may say you don't have time. What if you could hire a chef?
If I could, I would hire a driver. I said that I don't like to drive. If I had the money, I would pay a chauffeur.
So
money can stop
a lot
rubbish.
of things that today you may give as excuse for the reason why you are not doing some of these things that maybe I'm talking about. Oh yeah, Kingsley, you don't know, man. I work, I'm tired, and when I'm hungry, I just want to grab. If you had the resources that could put all those things in place, someone who could check your fridge to make sure all the stuff that is in your fridge is only the stuff that you really need to eat. Someone who could remind you every time you want to eat, you say, no, you can't eat that. If you have that kind of service, you will live life. That's why people who have the resources, they can also live longer, because they can put all those things in place.
Hey, I'm back. Wonderful. I hope the clip you watched impacted you or provoked you to think about some things about yourself, about how you perceive yourself. I hope it's resonating with you, and I hope you picked out something from it. Please put in the comment, what stood out to you the most when you watched this clip? What is it that you might have a question about, that you feel like, hey, you're not so sure and you're still curious? Put it in the comment section. I read all my comments every time I put out a video out there, and I do the best I can to respond to them. And if you like us to dive into some of one or two of the areas or the topics that you heard today, please do so in the comment section as well. Let's go in and let's do a deep dive. Let's examine these things and see how we can improve our lives, right? That is what this channel is all about. Demystifying some of the concepts and some of the beliefs we've held over time about money. So again, I'm glad that you were on and you watched. And without much ado, remember this though, that with all of your getting, get understanding. Have a great day.